Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Maybe. Hey, Tennyson. Yeah, bud. We're almost ready to go. Just sorting out the YouTube side. So we're simulcasting on YouTube and Facebook. Facebook, no problems, but YouTube, we just got to do a few things. Good evening, Bear. I'll be with you in a sec, mate. We're almost ready to go. Okay. Beautiful. I think we are good to go. All right. Just wait. We're starting to get... I think we've just gone live on Facebook, which is great. We're starting to get a few people there. It's always difficult with these. If we start them too early, people don't get a chance to get online to have a look. And if we wait too late, people get bored and switch off. So we've got to find a happy medium where it takes us about a minute or two to get going. So while I got you here, I'll see what... Bianca, thank you in advance. Nistro. I've got a new name, Nistro. No worries, Bianca. Hey, David, how are you? Evening, guys. Evening. Hello. Boom, alak blum. I don't know what that means, but cool. Hey, mate, watching from Yeppoon. Oh, you're going to be a bit disappointed, Aussie Mac. There's not much we're going to talk about for Yeppoon. We're planning a Hughenden trip, Lion Crower. Oh, maybe give that a little bit of a go. Give that a little bit of a miss. Upper level environment of the system. That'd be great. Are we talking? I think we're talking about the Kimberley system. Yeah, sure. We can talk about the Kimberley system and the upper level environment for sure. We might kick off now, folks. All right. So we'll kick off with Northeast Queensland. So the way these go, by the way, my name's Chris Nitzo. I'm lead forecaster at Weather IQ. I'm also owner at Weather IQ. Weather IQ's been around for 14 years. We know our shit. We don't stuff around, all right? If we see something's going to happen that's big, we tell you. If we think a lot of shit's hype, we tell you, all right? So the other thing, by the way, this broadcast always sponsored there by our major sponsor, Fair Income Builds, on the top left. So show them some love if you're in the market for a shed, safe, accredited shed. And of course, we're not government funded. We're totally self-funded, and we rely on support from our subscriber base at weatheriq.com.au/subscribe. And these are the prices: $32.95 for a year. That gets you all my video forecasts. For today, for example, these are the video forecasts. We did one on Queensland, one on the North Oz tropics, looking at cyclones in the next 2 weeks, one on the Cairns region, one in the Townsville region, one in the Mackay region. The Kimberley, we talked about what effects this cyclone is going to have on them. The northwest Queensland, the Gulf country, southern and central Queensland, and that's it for today. So sometimes we'll do 8, sometimes we'll do 10, sometimes we'll do 12. So your support goes a long way. So we thank you. And as I say, we try to make it as affordable as we can. At $30 a year, I don't think you can be more affordable. Alrighty. So firstly, let's go over to the northeast Queensland. Let's have a chat about this, eh? All right, so we've got on the coastline between Innisfail and Ingham at the moment a convergence zone. So convergence zone is where this northeasterly or north-northeasterly flow is coming into the coastline and it's being squeezed by an easterly flow. So an easterly flow to the south around Ingham and a northeasterly flow and a northerly flow here around Innisfail. And these air masses come together, they get squeezed, and the mountain ranges help to create the lift. So we had a lot of this around Ingham yesterday. Today that area's been a little bit further north, and we've seen some very significant falls so far in that Cassary Coast region. Let's have a quick look. I'll just get the Bureau of Meteorology's latest rainfall totals out there for this area, and there have been some very good falls so far. Yeah, Tully, South Mission Beach 165, Euramo 107. That's just in the last few hours since 9 o'clock. And a lot of this rain didn't really kick off until probably just after lunch for some of the heavier falls. So there's been some good falls and obviously great falls further to the west, and we'll talk about those in the next part of this. So let's have a look at what we can expect across this area for the next, probably few days, in fact. So not just for tonight, but also the next few days. We're going to start to see on the high-res model, we'll start with that. Sorry, we've been looking at a lot of cyclone stuff for the Kimberley folks lately. So just need to get my models up. All right. So we're looking here at the high-res model. Now, one of the problems we've got with a high-res model is, one of the great things about it is it's high-res. One of the problems with it, it tends to over-exaggerate a lot of things, all right? So the expectation here of the sort of rainfall, and this is the problem, people don't understand that, and they'll just post the rainfall numbers from the high-res model. They'll panic everyone, and everyone will go crazy, and then none of it will happen, or only like a small portion of it will happen, and once again, the weathermen are wrong. No, it's just idiots who don't know how to use it. All right, so the thing that the high-res model is telling us, as you can see on your screen here, is that this area around the Tully-Cardwell area is the focal point of convection at the moment. The high-res model is predicting that some of that will filter down through the Townsville district tonight, but only in a weakened format. So we're not expecting to see sort of really heavy rain through the Townsville district. We are expecting to see some rain through the Townsville district. Now, more importantly, what's happening further to the north is we're reinforcing the convergence. So what's happening here is instead of just drifting down to Townsville and then going away, the rainfall is being reinforced by the constant squeezing effect of the different air masses. And so what we're seeing there is a reinforcing of that convergence around that north tropical coast. So as the upper level environment and the mid-level winds drift that rain southwards to Townsville, there's not much convergence over Townsville right now. All right, so the stuff weakens as it goes southwards, but then the new stuff develops right along that convergence zone. So let me give you an idea of what's happening through the mid-levels of the atmosphere here. These are our thunderstorm steering winds, and our thunderstorm steering winds right this minute are northwesterly. So they're dragging these storms and pushing them towards the coast up around the Daintree, and they're dragging them from northwest to southeast. Now you'll notice as we get closer to Tully, Cardwell and Ingham, see how those winds drop off? So what happens here is a deceleration of the storm. So as the storms move in this northwest to southeast direction, they're moving at a decent clip. So that means that rainfall up here, while decent, it's not going to be too significant, right? But as these slow down, as they get further southwards, the rainfall production from them becomes fairly significant, a lot more significant. And so what we can see here is over the course of the next few days, or the course of the next 24 to 36 hours, we've got those really strong steering winds out west, and we've got the really strong steering winds way up north. But as we start to move down to Cairns, Innisfail, Cardwell, Ingham, to a lesser extent Townsville once again doesn't have that converging flow pattern. So you can see here that we've got a situation where these storms are going to be slowing down. They're going to be moving north to south, yep, but they're going to be moving at not a very decent clip, which means that there's more time over individual locations to give you more rainfall from each individual cell. So that's what the model there is telling us. Now, generally speaking, the model will over-exaggerate, and this is a great example of the over-exaggeration. Like, it decides to dump, what's that, about over 1,000 millimetres on the section of coast, all right? That's not going to happen. But, you know, if you don't know and you post that, people start panicking and going, oh, shit, we're going to get a metre of rain in 2 days. That's not going to be the case. But what we do, excuse me, what we do need to be aware of is that, yeah, there is some serious rainfall potential on that section of coastline due to that reinforcement. One of the other things I'll show you is what's going on at the surface. And one of the things we're going to see at the surface is a big increase in our easterly flow. So in the next 24 hours, and this reinforces the squeezing from the bottom, all right? So what we're going to see is this east-southeasterly flow through Townsville, east to northeasterly flow through Tully, creating the squeezing effect there around Tully Cardwell. Then we've got the same type of flow pattern affecting and creating a squeeze pattern just off the coast of Port Douglas, Cairns and Innisfail. And so we're going to have this squeezing pattern going on through both of these areas. And then eventually what's going to happen here is the entire flow of this east-northeasterly is going to increase as we go into tomorrow. And so tomorrow we're looking at a much more active weather day than today. And that's because the squeezing is stronger at the surface between the northeasterlies and the easterlies. The other thing you will notice tomorrow is that, generally speaking, the flow pattern through the Herbert region has gone from what it is tonight, which is southeasterly, to east-northeasterly. So that will drive a lot more rainfall potential down into the Ingham, Rolling Stone, maybe even the northern suburbs of Townsville get involved in that as we go through the day tomorrow with that more east-northeasterly to easterly flow. That's not a great flow for those of you in Townsville. I know there's a lot of folks here who are watching this from Townsville. This isn't the best flow for Townsville to get big rain. This is a flow that sees Townsville getting a lot of shower activity, heavy at times, but this is a perfect flow for big rain from Rolling Stone all the way up to Cairns. That sort of, and even the Daintree. So that sort of east-northeasterly flow is perfect for those areas. Not quite perfect, certainly not perfect for the Burdekin, and not quite perfect for the Townsville district. So our biggest rainfall over the course of the next 24 to 36 hours is certainly going to be north of Townsville, and quite likely in that Cassery, Herbert, and even potentially Cairns, if we can see some, the Cairns district, I should say, if we can see some convergence developing right next to the coastline there with that strong east-northeasterly flow. Obviously, this means that boaties need to be very, very careful tomorrow. Very strong winds will develop throughout these coastal waters, much stronger than what they have been today. So the key there is an understanding that the convergence is going to increase, the rainfall intensities are going to increase, and the general rain spread is going to increase too. And I think that's a slight positive, is that instead of just focusing in one little spot, we're sort of spreading that rain over a fairly large area here once this east-northeasterly flow establishes and hits these mountain ranges. So we are going to see some very heavy falls. Let's go to another model that's not going to over-dramatise it as much as this one, because this is going to give us a much better overview of what we can expect, okay? It's not going to get the top end numbers right, but it's also not going to show some crazy stuff that's going to panic people. All right, so we can see that tonight the heaviest falls, and it's got that pretty spot on, right? It's got that heaviest falls between about Tully and Ingham, eventually sort of drifting south to the northern suburbs of Townsville by sort of 10 p.m. Or so. As we continue on into the overnight period, you can see the reinforcement of rainfall. So see how it's reinforced rainfall overnight, early in the morning, tomorrow, in this area between Innisfail and, once again, Rolling Stone. But there's rainfall outside of those areas, so I don't want you just to focus on the orange and red. Yeah, sure, the orange and red is the flood-type rainfalls, all right? But the yellows are still very heavy, potentially very heavy rainfall. The green is still good rainfall, good opportunities to pick up showers, general patchy rain, that sort of stuff, good grass greening falls. All right, so anything in the green, anything in the yellow, anything in the green is okay rain. Yellow could be potentially heavy. Orange and red, of course, is going to be very heavy. And you can see where our orange and red is, probably just south of Innisfail, just north of Ingham. That appears to be where our orange and red is between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. tomorrow. Moving into 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. tomorrow, we can see slight progression northwards of that orangey stuff and yellow stuff, and so you can see there's potential there for overnight, early morning shower and storm activity near the coastline around the Daintree, Cairns region. Heavy falls of rain potentially in those isolated pockets. You can see some heavy rainfall anywhere sort of north of Rolling Stone, and lighter falls further south towards the Townsville district as well. All right, so as we move into 4 a.m., 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., tomorrow, so through the day tomorrow, we're anticipating the convergence to be strongest around the Innisfail region, but you can see how far we establish that fairly significant convergence, right? So remember, the whole flow of the northeast coast turns east-northeast tomorrow. So this drives a lot of moisture into those big mountain ranges from the Daintree all the way south to Rolling Stone, where the big mountain ranges finish. All right, so that's why this area, we see such a vast area of yellow, because we don't concentrate the convergence in one spot. We spread it out over the entire sort of length of the coastline. So there's really good chance of good rainfall right across that entire region tomorrow once that east-northeasterly really gets stronger. Notice for Townsville, once again, we're sort of on the southern boundary of anything heavy, all right? So our heavy stuff is Rolling Stone northwards, and especially sort of Cardwell, Tully northwards tomorrow, looking most likely. Then as we go into tomorrow evening, this is when our convergence will peak. Our strength and intensity of that lift and of that squeeze at the surface peaks tomorrow night. And you can see here the peak at this stage showing up around Innisfail. Now that might change. We might be here tomorrow afternoon and say, oh, hang on, that's around Tully. Or hang on, that's around Cardwell. It might change. It won't change a lot, but it might change. And so if it changes a little bit too far north, well, that puts us closer to Cairns, right? So we've got to be mindful that tomorrow night is when the convergence is at its peak. So this rain event around northeast Queensland will peak in intensity overnight tomorrow night. So we can see there that the peak at this stage expected to be just south of Cairns, just north of Cardwell. So somewhere in there looks to be the peak of the rain. Now, that doesn't mean other people are not getting rain. You can see rain extends down to Townsville, down to the Burdekin. You can see rain extends up towards the Daintree. All right, so just because you're not in the peak doesn't mean you're not getting rain. And some of that rain will be heavy at times in those other areas. It's just that that's where we're peaking. All right, as we continue on Tuesday morning, we see some progression northwards, potentially. Not all models agree on that sharpness of progression northwards. Some of the models want to hold that a little bit closer down towards Innisfail. But if that is to be the case, then our greatest potential for heavy rainfall for Cairns occurs overnight Monday night, Tuesday morning, and will continue through Tuesday. And you can see there, continuing through Tuesday, the possibility of weak circulations complicates this. So sometimes what we have as these convergence zones ebb and flow, sometimes we develop, see up there around Cape Trib, because there's a little bit of curvature in the flow. So sometimes that curvature actually wraps up and becomes a little low pressure system, or a little, it's not really a low pressure system, it's called an eddy, E-D-D-Y, an eddy that develops in that flow. And sometimes what can happen with those eddies, if they happen on the coast, they can dramatically increase intensity of rainfall, but if they happen 20 k's off the coast, they keep the rainfall just off the coast. So that's what creates a fair bit of complexity in the actual intensity of rainfall as we move forward. All right, so that's what's happening there. Now, as we move into Wednesday and Thursday, the most likely scenario is probably not what's being modelled here. On Wednesday, we actually expect to see the rain begin to spread southwards again. So we actually expect to see this heavy rain pushing southwards a bit more than what's being reflected here. And then on Thursday, Wednesday night into Thursday, we could see some heavy falls redeveloping on the Herbert-Burdekin region as this entire system pushes southwards. And we do expect that heavier rainfall to enter the Townsville district again on Wednesday night or Thursday. And then from there, we're not too sure how that will go beyond that, but that's all right. We've got plenty of time to figure that out. We don't need to know at this stage. It's already pretty complex. We don't want to start guessing 5 to 10 days out and not really having a clue. But we do understand that there's going to be an oscillation. The heavy rain will shift northwards a touch, and then we'll shift southwards back to where it started. And it started down here around the Townsville Burdekin yesterday. So the idea will be northwards up to about the Innisfail Cairns area, and then oscillate back to the south later in the week. But that doesn't mean, if we're oscillating the heavy rain northwards, it doesn't mean that everyone else isn't getting rain. All right, everyone else is still getting rain on that east coast because of that beautiful easterly flow. All right, that easterly flow full of moisture, and it only takes a little bit of lift to create significant rainfall from that flow. It's just that these areas are the ones most likely to get the squeeze. So not just the easterly flow, but also a little bit of squeeze in the flow, or what we call confluence, where the air sort of accelerates from the same direction, but accelerates as it comes up and hits the mountain ranges and gets lifted orographically. So a mixture of confluence and orographic lift, or a mixture of convergence, which is air masses coming from, say, the northeast and the southeast, and then getting lifted like that. All right, so we've got a sort of combination of both of those going on through that northeast coastline for the next couple of days. So end result, when we're taking a look at sort of rainfalls, the northern extension of that rainfall is probably in question about how far north that rainfall goes. The southern side of that rainfall seems to be pretty spot on. And of course, we're also encountering the fact that this southern region will start to see rainfall re-enter the region, the heavier rainfall re-enter the region later in the week. So that's a generally conservative estimate. The AI modelling, unfortunately, doesn't give us high resolutions. So we've got to sort of use some deterministic modelling. The AI model we use as a general overview of what we can expect, and then we sort of refine that by looking at the deterministic, the physics-based models. And the physics-based models are telling us very similar things. And you can see here on the physics-based model between now and Friday, we can see that heavy rain extends up to about Cairns, that really intense rain up to about Cairns, and then pushes back down to the south towards Townsville with some really heavy falls around Rolling Stone, Ingham, Cardwell, Tully, and up towards Babinda and those sort of areas. All right, so that's where we're anticipating, and that's where we can sort of we can sort of see what the AI is showing us overall, and then we can start to refine that by using our physics-based models to try and figure out more so the sort of numbers we could be dealing with here, because the AI probably won't give us very accurate numbers. All right. That's basically it in a nutshell of what we expect. In a nutshell, it's taken me 20 minutes to explain it, but that's what we expect to see over the next few days here in northeast Queensland. So obviously by that stage we'll probably see some river rises for sure, given the fact that we're expecting that fairly widespread convergence zone over a fairly large area. All right, but once again, just be mindful if anyone's showing you these sort of doom and gloom charts that are showing you 1,000 millimetres of rain, just be aware that the model is very much an over-exaggerative model when it comes to rainfall intensities, and over especially the day 2 part of the forecast. So the first 12 hours, it gets pretty close to right, and then beyond 12 hours, it starts to go very pear-shaped, this model. So we like to use it for the next few hours, and then we sort of like to see what it's doing just for giggles, but then we don't really use it for that 12 to 36 hour period unless something really obvious is there. All right, so I hope that explains what we can expect across the region. And as I say, don't panic too much. This is something we see in northeast Queensland 3 to 4 times a year. All right, it's not something that's foreign to us. It's not something we can't deal with. 3 to 4 times a year we cop it. All right, so it's the same thing that we cop every wet season. All right, let's move over to the northwest, because that's not the same thing that they cop every wet season. This is a really big event for them. All right, so let's get over there. So in the northwest, we have a situation where we have a low pressure system. I'm just going to zoom us right out so we can see that low. And that low is now drifting southwards. It was drifting a fair way eastwards to about Burketown, Doomadgee, and then is drifting southwards now through the Gulf country. On the southeastern side is where we're looking at our big rain for this one. So southeast of the circulation is where we want to check out for our big rain. By the way, everything that's going on in northeast Queensland is because of what's going on here. Ordinarily in northeast Queensland, sorry I'm getting sidetracked, in northeast Queensland what we would have seen was about 2 or 3 hours of heavy rain as the convergence zone pushed through, and it would have gone all the way up to Cooktown, and everyone would have got 2 hours of heavy rain and that's it. But because the low is here, it continues to encourage this moisture flow in from the Coral Sea in towards it. It also encourages moisture flow from the Gulf of Carpentaria in towards it, and that's why we've seen some massive rainfall through Corumba in the last 24 hours as well. So we're expecting that low to drift southwards over the next couple of days, and we're expecting that low to produce its biggest rain on the southeastern quadrant. So let me show you what that looks like with regards to, once again, we'll use the AI modelling for a general overview because it's pretty good at giving us general overviews. All right, so we can see here that our heaviest rainfall as we push through this today, through this afternoon into this evening, is here around the Gulf country, southern Gulf country, into the northern parts of northwest Queensland. Moving beyond this time frame, we see that it's only a very slow motion to the south. So we're going to see good convergence redeveloping around Corumba again tonight. And we're going to see that convergence push around the circulation here. This is where we're anticipating the strongest squeezing effect is on that southeastern quadrant. as the system continues to shift southwards slowly, we can continue to see the southeastern quadrant of the circulation. So I just want to show you where the circulation is, because some of you will be looking for where the low is, and you'll be looking for the heavy rain around the low. The heavy rain is actually away from the low. It's where we're forcing the air to curve into the low. All right, so just to be clear here, where is the low? The low is way back here, all right, way to the west. But what's happening is we're forcing the air in and curving it around the low here, hundreds of kilometres away from the low. So that's where our biggest rainfall is. So it might be a bit of something you've got to sort of wrap your head around. It's not like a tropical cyclone where the strongest stuff is happening right in close to the centre. In this situation, our strongest stuff is happening here, where we're squeezing the airflow in and around the circulation. There's not much going on in the middle of the low. So as this low drifts over the top of the ISA, don't think that the ISA is going to cop it. If the ISA is going to cop it, it's going to cop it when it's south and southeast of the low. All right. So the areas that are most likely to cop it, probably not even Mount Isa. It's probably more so Cloncurry, Richmond, Julia Creek. These are the sort of areas where we're seeing that squeezing and rotational effect the most as we go into tomorrow. So when we go back to the MSLP precip, so once again, great example there. Our strongest precip, our heaviest precip is displaced a couple of hundred Ks away from where the low is. All right. So as we continue on, Monday evening, our rainfall peaks in intensity on Monday evening. Our squeezing effect is the strongest. It's interesting though when you think about it, isn't it? When we've got our strongest squeezing Monday night going on here, and our strongest opportunity for heaviest rainfall on the northeast coast Monday night, Tuesday morning as well. So these two are coinciding. The strongest squeezing effect here is coinciding with the strongest squeezing effect over in the northeast. Amazing how weather works, isn't it? And how systems play with each other. All right, so as we go through, we can see on Tuesday morning, we begin to drop off the intensity of rainfall. And through the day on Tuesday, we start to see a decrease in general intensity. There's still a lot of rain there, but it's just not quite as intense rainfall. And you can see that it's probably moving a little bit south of the Flinders Highway as well. And we're seeing a fair bit of outflow. By the way, for those of you down around Longreach, Claremont, Emerald, it's a fair bit of outflow cloud there. So it'll look very gloomy and dark, but there won't be a hell of a lot of rain until the remnants of the system start to move away. But there's still a substantial amount of rainfall there, east of Mount Isa, west of Richmond, and gradually shifting south of the Flinders Highway. Eventually, what we expect to see happen as we go into Wednesday and Thursday is maybe a slight regeneration of some heavier rainfall and a progression eastwards of that heavier rainfall longer term. It's not being shown very well here on the modelling. Let me give you a look at a model that does appear a little bit more succinct with that process. All right, so in this particular one, we can see this is the Euro model. This is quite a good model when it comes to tropical lows. And we can see how generally we're starting to shift that heavier rainfall east of Richmond and southeast of Richmond longer term. And we eventually sort of create a trough through the weekend that drives a fair bit of rain into central Queensland and then eventually eastern Queensland, and eventually will clear us out potentially as well into early next week. Clear out at least the southern and central parts of the state again into early next week. So that's the expectation, but look, that's a long way out, and we've got a lot of water over bridge, under bridge, whatever way you want to say it, before we get there. All right, so the big understanding here is going to be the intensity of rainfall for the next 2 to 3 days before we see that easing on Wednesday. But some very intense rain resulting in some very intense numbers here. Remember, this isn't northeast Queensland. These folks will not handle 500-600 millimetres in 3 days, all right? It's not like North Queensland where 500-600 millimetres on the east coast, we can handle that over 3 days quite comfortably, all right? Here, there's nowhere for that water to go. It's all flat land. And it's going to be, I can't stress enough how big a disaster this is going to be for the northwestern region. So, you know, it annoys me when people come on and have a go at us when we're trying to really relay the message that this is massive, this is big, this isn't your typical wet season event. We don't typically see 500-600 millimetres over this region. We don't typically see 300 to 400 over such a large area. 300 to 400 is almost the entire year's worth of rainfall here. in this western part of Queensland. So, you know, we're getting close to a year's worth of rainfall in literally 3 days, on top of the stuff that we've just had through that region. All right, so that's why it's such a big thing, and that's why we make such a big deal out of it, and it's not just another wet season. All right, so that's our northwest Queensland, and last and not least, we're going to have a quick chat about the Kimberley cyclone, and that system is developing very quickly today. Has shown it was looking rubbish. If you remember what we talked about the other day, we weren't looking at anything really here. It was just a really poorly formed low. This thing is probably a tropical cyclone already. It is very small. That's the big thing to understand with this system. So a very small cyclone can fluctuate in intensity very quickly. All right, so it can go from this to Cat 3 in a matter of 24 hours, less than 24 hours, all right? It can, if it finds the right environment, it can really intensify. But the flip side, always think of the flip side there, it can go from Cat 3 to a low in that same 6 to 12 hours, all right? So it can really intensify quickly, but it can really and dramatically decrease intensity quickly. And this is exactly what we're expecting to see as it approaches the coast. So let's have a look. We're going to go into Derby, and we're going to have a look at a couple of models here for this region. Firstly, let me give you an idea at what the sort of forecast is for this, so you can get a handle on, not the official forecast, of course, you can check that out whenever you want, generally the model forecasts, all right? So, as I say, in these updates, we're not going to regurgitate the official information to you. You can find that for yourselves. I want to try and explain what's going on here. All right, so the expectation here is that the system will intensify into a cyclone at some stage overnight tonight. The system's tracking in a southwest to south-southwest direction at the moment. It's going to shift and become and move in a more southerly direction tomorrow morning. And by tomorrow afternoon, we expect it to begin moving southeast. As it moves southeast, we can see there that it continues that motion until tomorrow night. So we expect it to continue that motion until Monday night. And then on Tuesday, we start to see... Let's try that again. On Tuesday, we start to see a fairly sharp eastward motion. So at the moment, our southern area of interest is, don't know if you can see it there, Broome. So that's about the southernmost point of all the model members. And the northernmost point is way up here in this very sparsely populated near the Mitchell Plateau region. The most likely scenario is that the system will cross somewhere around the central to northern Dampier Peninsula. Now, the thing isn't so much the crossing, it's the timing of crossing, because I'm going to show you some charts here that are going to make sense when I explain them. So here's where the system peaks in intensity, Monday night, Tuesday, early morning. That's the peak in intensity of the system. And you can see there is quite a number of computer models that have developed this into a Cat 3 cyclone, these orange dots. All right, lots more models at Cat 2 level and some even at Cat 4 level. So the idea at this stage would be the general model consensus is a moderate to higher end Cat 2 at this point in time on the Australian scale. As we continue on into Tuesday afternoon, this is the most likely time of impact, Tuesday afternoon to Tuesday night at this stage. And so on Tuesday afternoon, very few models are hitting the coast at anything more than Cat 2. So even those ones that had it going to Cat 3 and 4, by the time they got it hitting the coast, it's already dropped back to a Cat 2. The ones that only peaked it at Cat 2 are already starting to drop it to Cat 1. So the intensity drops very suddenly there on Tuesday afternoon, and the intensity drops even more suddenly by Tuesday night. So if the system hasn't hit the coast by Tuesday night, it's barely a Category 1 on Tuesday night. And by Wednesday morning, if it hasn't hit the coast, it'll just sort of meander northeastwards as a weak low. All right, this system is very small. So as I say, the fluctuations in intensity could be significant here as it tracks in a south and then easterly direction. I want to show you why the cyclone weakens, so you've got an understanding of why this is so important. This timing of impact is so important. So let's go. All right, and as I say, I want to go into Broome and I want to have a look at the charts here for Broome. By the way, this is on our subscription service, so you can check out our weather centre on our subscription service, weatheriq.com.au/subscribe. Starts at $30. The weather centre, if you don't want me gibbering and you just want to use the weather centre, it's $39.95 a year. If you want me gibbering and the weather centre, it's $69.95 a year. If you just want me gibbering, $32.95 a year. All right, so let's go back into here and let's have a look. So, and what we're going to do here, we're going to use the European model, and we're going to just check out wind gusts first. This is the cool charts that show you how strong the winds could get. And yeah, we can see the system looks like it might max out at around Cat 2, Cat 2 plus sort of level. Now, what happens here is tropical cyclones need a lot of moisture, and they need a lot of moisture right over the top of their circulation centre. And they need the air to feed them with more moisture. So what happens here is that the system has a lot of moisture right around its circulation there today, tomorrow, lots of moisture around it. But we do start to see a lot of dry air on the western side, okay, which doesn't kill the cyclone because it's on the western side. It's not over the top of the cyclone. Now, what happens longer term is on Tuesday, and this is why Tuesday is so important and the timing of impact is so important, because as we go through the day, this dry air tries to penetrate right into the circulation. And the reason it does that is because of this thing. We call it wind shear. Wind shear is the change of direction and speed of winds with height. And what we see here is that the system is under a fairly low to moderate shear environment all the way into the coast, all the way into Tuesday, and that might limit why we're not expecting the little cyclone to become a Cat 4 or Cat 5, but we're expecting it to be a 1, 2 or a 3, right? Because it still has a little bit of wind shear. But then, as we go into Tuesday, here's where it gets a little bit pear-shaped, because we see this wall of shear beginning to affect the system on Tuesday between about 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. See how we've gone from greens on this chart to oranges and reds. So those oranges and reds are absolute death to a cyclone. And what they do through the deep layer atmosphere is they bring in whatever the air was doing out here west of the cyclone, and they bring it over the top of the cyclone. So what was the air doing west of the cyclone? It was very dry. So this dry air is getting pulled into the cyclone very quickly as we get into Tuesday, and it gets ingested into the circulation. And why is that bad? Well, because it evaporates all of the deep storm activity associated with the cyclone, and without the deep storms, the cyclone begins to weaken. And that's the expectation of the cyclone as it comes onto the coast. So the key understanding here that you need to have, the earlier on Tuesday the cyclone hits the coast, the more likely it is to be quite strong. The later on Tuesday the cyclone hits the coast, the more likely the cyclone is to be weak. And if it doesn't hit until overnight Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, the more likely the system is to have decayed back to a low. Still some gusty winds and some showers and storms, but fairly much just a low. The other thing to understand here on the Kimberley, if you're living in Broome and Derby, is that a lot of the rainfall that the system produces will be ahead of the cyclone. On the back side of the cyclone, because of that dry air ingestion, we won't see much rainfall. So the idea here is you've got to be east and possibly just southeast of the circulation centre to be able to get the heavy rain. So even though the cyclone's still offshore at this time, which is down here, 5 p.m, even though the cyclone's still offshore, you can see that a lot of the heavy rain is now affecting the tip of the Dampier Peninsula. And that's because of that wind shear, which is pushing and pulling that storm activity away from the centre. You can see there that's potentially the model's toying with the idea of the system just intensifying a touch very close to the coast. That's more to do with frictional effects and funneling and perturbations in the airflow rather than the structure of the cyclone. So don't pay too much attention to that, because if the cyclone's 10k further north, that doesn't happen. If the cyclone's 10k further south, that doesn't happen. It's just because of the effect of King Sound, which is a water body, and all this landmass around, which creates those disturbances in the airflow and that acceleration, deceleration. We talked about that for some of those little eddies in northeast Queensland 2 nights ago, if you remember that discussion. All right, so that same sort of thing is happening here, where the little eddies are being just being given a little bit of extra oomph on that southeastern side due to that land-water interaction. All right, so that's all I got for you. There's our 3 systems. In a nutshell, we've had the northeast Queensland coastline seeing significant rainfall from Rolling Stone northwards and eventually back down to the Townsville district as we get later in the week. We've seen the Gulf system. The Gulf system is going to create very heavy, very heavy rainfall in that region for the next till at least Tuesday night. All right, and now we've seen the tropical cyclone around the Kimberley, and that system expected to make landfall between Tuesday and Wednesday. But what time it makes landfall, we just said, matters, because Wednesday, nothing to worry about. Tuesday, something to worry about. Okay? All right, let's go and have a look at some of the questions. So, folks, if I've already talked about it, or I won't talk about it again, I'll just sort of refer you back to the video that we talked about that area. No mowing lawns at Mission North, Dave. Yes, no mowing lawns, mate. Not a problem. Sassy, peekaboo. Hey, Sassy. Melissa Jane, we are going to get smashed again today. It was hectic. Yeah, Mission Beach is going to get smashed again. Sorry. Yeah, definitely. That one we can say with a great deal of certainty. Shop shelves are starting to become bare in Townsville. I really don't understand this. Townsvillians, come on, pull your heads in. Who's going to buy a bunch of water and rubbish and whatever the hell, toilet paper in Townsville? I mean, seriously, it's a bit of rain. We've seen it before. Now, I say that with all respect. I'm not saying that about out west. Out west isn't a bit of rain. That shit's real. That shit's really bad. All right, but for Townsville, come on, man. I don't know who's passing that message on that Townsville needs to get prepped for extreme rainfall. Sure, there's going to be heavy rain in Townsville. No one's saying there's not, all right? But come on. What do you need to go to the supermarket and run those shelves there? Jesus. Anyway, that's not on you, Julie. Thanks for letting us know. John, hammering rain in Curramine. Yep, there'll be plenty more where that came from. Just wondering, is Ingham on the radar? Yes, Lindy, of course it is. Yeah. So remember that northeast Queensland, Lindy, that northeast Queensland zone starts at Rolling Stone and extends all the way up to about the Daintree, with our heaviest falls expected between Rolling Stone and, Gordonvale. Nothing's changed there in terms of the overall pattern. So yes, Ingham is definitely. YouTube stream seems to have stopped. That's not good. Why is that happening? Let me have a quick squiz at the YouTube stream. You're right. You are spot on. Okay, I'm gonna have to put this on YouTube. Yeah, I'm gonna have to put this on YouTube. For some reason, it looks like it stopped. I have no idea why that would have happened, but I'll put this on YouTube anyway. So does Cairns have anything to worry about right at this very second, as I received 6 alerts today? Yeah, Cairns does have a chance of picking up some heavy rain overnight. Once again, we go back to Cairns quickly. There it is. So for Cairns, what we're looking for is this stuff coming off the Cooktown coastline, off the coastline of Cooktown, and potentially off the coastline of the Daintree later on. Overnight tonight, early tomorrow, we may see some localised convergence near the Cairns coastline through the nighttime, early morning hours. You're not going to be in the main zone, but there could be like a little secondary zone in this area that starts to fire up overnight, early in the morning, and that's what we're looking for Cairns. So yeah, technically in the firing line, sure, but you're just not the main centre of attention. The main centre of attention is further south where that convergence is right now. So you can see Curramine, Mission, Tully, those sort of areas. But there is a secondary convergence, Max, that could occur through that Cairns district in the next 12 to 18 hours. So yeah, and overall for the next 2-3 days, you're definitely in there. Madeline, YouTube. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, so we'll have to get the replay of this on there for YouTube, eh? G'day from Moranbah, can recommend fair income sheds. Good stuff, Paul. Glad they did a good job for you. Good stuff. Hello from Clongcurry, Anita. Oh, geez, Anita, look after yourself there. Make sure everyone knows what's coming, eh? It's a big couple of days there. Palm Cove and Clifton Beach have had virtually nothing. Yeah, it has been quiet in that area for sure, but it won't stay quiet. We will see some localised heavy falls there once these little convergence maxes set up. You won't get the main part, but you'll get the little localised part that starts to set up. Okay, that'll start possibly even from overnight tonight, but very likely from tomorrow. Good evening from Serena. G'day, Glenda. Yeah, not much going on for Serena. Just a bit of cloud and a bit of drizzle there for you guys. Very wet at Mission. Yes, Dave. There's going to be plenty more where that came from. Bit further north at Wonga Beach and basically nothing here. Yeah, there won't be until there will be. The thing with those areas up around the Daintree is that we're going to see localised pockets of very heavy rainfall through there, right? So it's not going to be like the widespread stuff down here. It's going to be little local pockets of extreme rainfall when it happens, but hasn't happened yet. It will happen. It's one of those Pantene ads. You know them old Pantenes? It won't happen overnight, but it will happen. Except this one might start overnight. So just be aware that yeah, there is a chance there for significant rain. Oh, I would say more than a chance. We expect to see some significant rain through that area. It's just a matter of at what point do we develop those little heavy cells. Where is my late note, says David. Yeah, sorry, mate. I always have technical difficulties. I've seen numerous reports that Cairns is in for a hammering. Can you please explain? Yeah, I think I have, Chris. I think I've explained that. So I've explained why that's the case. Kelvin, folks, listen to Nitso, please. There is no shit with his weather forecast. Please join the group to keep updated. I've been a member for years, and people will come asking the weather doing. I quote Nitso as he knows. Folks, forget the rest, dribbling shit, and come join the best weather forecast you'll ever get. Cheers, Kelvin. That's a great endorsement. Thanks, mate. Thank you. Damp topography, yeah, Sarah Jane. Yep, absolutely. That's what creates a lot of the rain around the northeast coast. How's air looking later this week? Yeah, air's probably... we haven't talked much about the Burdekin, have we? So let's have a quick squiz at the Burdekin. So towards the end of the week, when this whole rainfall sets in again, down towards the Townsville district, we will potentially see some of that push into the Burdekin region as well. So we do expect to see an increase in shower activity through the Burdekin. You can see sort of bits of that as we go into Friday, Saturday. So you notice there that the sort of heavy shower, look, even Thursday, the heavy shower activity and possible thunderstorm activity and even general rain activity could start to develop through the Burdekin on Thursday, Friday and Saturday as that convergence zone shifts back to the Townsville area. All right, so that's probably where air will start to get some good rainfall, because between now and when that happens, you're probably just looking at what you're looking at today, gloomy, drizzle, Melbourne weather type stuff, right? So that's what we'd be expecting for the Burdekin for the next few days, and then things might take a turn for a little bit more interesting towards the end of the week, for sure. We are out at Rolling Stone. What type of wind should we be expect? Dale, probably, look, I would say the winds will increase tomorrow, for sure. If we just take a look here at Ingham, I think the sort of winds are probably, they're not cyclonic, but they will increase. And looking at our wind gusts at the moment, what are they suggesting? Yeah, so getting up to around that 25 to 30 knot range just off the coast, 30 to 35, and maybe even up to 40 with squalls. And if we take a look at the Access Sea, North Queensland, just bearing in mind, of course, that it'll be a little bit exaggerative, but give us a chance to sort of figure out the sort of winds there. Yeah, you can certainly see that we're getting winds, particularly just offshore. Yeah, they're sort of gusting and squalling up to 30 to 35 knots around Rolling Stone. So that's about where they'll peak. Maybe getting up to 40 to 50 knots through parts further northwards where we've got that convergence strongest. All right, so Rolling Stone's on the southern boundary of that strongest convergence. The bigger stuff, the strongest stuff, and possibly close to cyclonic stuff at times in offshore waters would likely be around the beaches, Curramine, Mission, Tully, possibly Hinchinbrook, that sort of area. Good work, Nitso. My 9-year-old and I love listening to you. Oh, Mark, careful. Sometimes I swear. Sometimes the idiots get me going, so I start swearing, mate. So just that word of warning. I hope your 9-year-old's heard some swear words in the past. I try and keep it at a minimum, but sometimes, especially if I've come straight from the gym, I've got that pre-workout in me. Whew, not a good mix. If Aramac gets 100 millimetres or more, we'll flood, as Aramac Torrens Creek is about to go under already. Aramac, sorry man, I don't know exactly where Aramac is. I think it's west of Charters Towers. So if we take a look at Hewenden, there's a fair chance you'll get more than 100 mils in the next few days. I'm assuming Aramac is in this area. Torrens Creek's there, so Aramac must be somewhere around there. Yeah, sometimes when you give me a little place, folks, you got to let me know where it's close to a big place, because I'm not great with my geography. Right, so you can see, look, at this stage, you're probably just too far east of the big stuff out west in that Torrens Creek area, and probably a touch too far west of the bigger stuff in the northeast coastline. So you're sort of stuck between... Oh, there's Aramac. Oh, it's way further south. Goodness me. All right, let's have another look there. Yeah, you're too far south of the big stuff, and too far too far south of the big stuff and too far west of the big stuff on the coast, mate. So we're not seeing any big rainfall there. I think one of the things I would say for Aramac is probably look out for when the low washes back to a trough and potentially starts moving eastwards later in the week, there might be an increase in rainfall, say around Thursday for Aramac, but probably nothing too dramatic there, all right, because you're too far south, you're more in that stable area. That's for Greg Knowles. Not that much in Goldsboro. Not sure where Goldsboro is, mate, but if it's anywhere near the northeast coast, there will be eventually. Liz Lavender, g'day Nitso, thank you for your live streams. No worries, Liz. Glad to help. King tides in Cairns on Wednesday and Thursday. How bad will it be? Ooh, good question. Well, I'll tell you what though. If they're Wednesday, Thursday, the one you've got to worry about is probably Wednesday because there'll still be a bit of rain there. Thursday, things should have settled down for Cairns. They should be moving more towards Townsville again. So probably Thursday, not too bad. And the winds aren't going to be all that significant either Thursday, but Wednesday would be the day that I'd be a little bit cautious for Cairns. Let's have a look. I'm pretty sure though we're not combining the king tides with big winds. Let me just have a look so don't quote me on that. Let me have a look at that first. Yeah, so there's Tuesday. So Monday night, Tuesday is when our convergence will peak. Yeah, there's nothing there that tells me Cairns is in for big winds on Wednesday. And if we take a look at the EC modelling, which tends to be the most accurate once again, let's have a look. Yeah, so our convergence peaks Tuesday, maybe a little circulation off the coast Wednesday. As long as that circulation doesn't get off the coast of Cairns, mate, I don't see too many issues there. I think the only issue is you're going to have a fair bit of runoff from the rainfall activity over Tuesday that needs to get out. So I'm not seeing any sort of the worst case scenario. So when you've got king tides is when you've got the big tides and then you've got a big easterly that pushes the water onto the land further. So it gives you a little bit more of a storm tide as such on top of the high water or the highest astronomical tides. So on top of that, then you've got a lot of rain happening at the same time. You can't run off that rain. So that's the worst case scenario. You're not going to hit the worst case scenario because you haven't got a bunch of easterlies piling the water on. The only thing that you'd say there is how much rain will be occurring at the time of the king tides. And at this stage, I would suspect that probably a bit, but not to the point where it's looking, torrential. Yeah, so we'll have another chat Tuesday night. Maybe ask me that question Tuesday night, eh? Bear, how close to Longreach will the heavier stuff get? Yeah, Longreach is still on the edge, Bear. So right on the edge. So there's more rain. There's more rain north of Longreach, mate. All the heavy stuff's north of Longreach. But on Thursday, there is a chance if that low does move and drift eastwards or southeastwards, we'll probably start to see some rain push into Longreach. It might be a little bit heavier, but not to the point where we're looking at anything overly intense for Longreach yet. That can change if the low and the trough sort of drift more southeastwards. But we will see generally for Longreach, if we just have a quick look now, we will generally see some pretty nice falls over the course of the next week and a half, right? So even though this system won't be providing the really heavy stuff over Longreach, there'll be enough there to keep you interested. And then as we go into the weekend, we've got a trough, and that trough's going to add more rain in and around the Longreach area with showers and thunderstorms. All right, so we've got sort of a mix. You're going to get a little bit from the low, and then you're going to get a fair bit from the trough as well. So together, you can see we're sort of starting to nudge 100 plus millimetres for Longreach. So that's not bad rain for Longreach. It's certainly not the stuff that you're getting up north, but it's not too bad at all for that part of the world. Jerry, you always do a grand job keeping us all informed for our subscribers. Yes, YouTube stopped, hence I'm here now. Yeah, that's concerning. I'll have a look at why YouTube stopped and I'll put this one up. What will happen with Mackay over the next week? Mate, I'm not going to go for it next week. No, we're not doing next week. We're doing next 4 or 5 days only, all right? And the next 4 or 5 days at this stage for Mackay, you're too far south or the big stuff. All right, so the only thing you're getting is a bit of gloomy cloud cover, some nice cool days, some southeasterly winds and some showers. Beyond day 5, we're probably, so this is rainfall. This is rainfall between now and you can see there's quite a bit of shower activity, a bit of light rain as we go through Wednesday, Thursday. But it's as we go into next weekend, that becomes interesting for Mackay. We may see some of that heavier rainfall from Townsville shift southwards into next weekend. We may see a trough come eastward. We should see a trough come eastwards from the west. So a few showers and thunderstorms. So that's the sort of stuff we might see around Mackay. But mate, overall this area, Mackay with Sundays, not very interesting whatsoever for the next 4 or 5 days at least. But I can't do a week because there's too much going on for the week. Sorry, Coyote. Jen, is it a coincidence these systems come when we get king tides? Yeah, just a coincidence, unfortunately. There's nothing there that says king tides attract this weather. It just happens that they just happen to coincide. Towers, Jake, Towers is probably looking at... it's one of those areas like Longreach, right, where it's just too far away from everything. So it's just too far away from the heavy rain of Townsville region, and it's just too far away from the heavy rain of Hughenden. So it doesn't mean you're not getting any rain. That's worthwhile rain for the Towers over the next week. But let's stick with between now and Thursday. That's pretty good rain. Most of that's saying around 40 to 80 millimetres in the area between now and Thursday. That's not bad for the Towers, but it's not going to flood you out, right? It's not going to be ridiculous flooding type situation that we've got out west of Hughenden and especially west of Richmond. It's not going to be the flooding situation that we're going to have around Ingham or anything like that, mate. So you're too far west of this stuff to get the good rain from that, and you're too far east for this stuff to get to the good rain from that. So you're sort of piggy in the middle. Charters Towers often finds themselves in this spot where they're too far west of the coastal activity and they're too far east of the inland stuff. So nothing too dramatic for Charters Towers, but worthwhile rainfall. It's going to keep the grass green, make the cows happy. Just popped in. Can we get an update on Townsville? Daniel, I think I talked about Townsville a fair bit there, mate, if you check up the start of the broadcast. So go into the start of the broadcast. At this stage, the heaviest rainfall will be north of Townsville for the next few days, but Townsville should get some nice falls, especially later in the week. Wednesday, Thursday, these look like good days for Townsville to pick up rainfall at this stage. But that can change depending on the way systems move. But that's the nutshell for Townsville, mate. Christy, where's this system going? I've outlined exactly where those systems are going. So I've outlined the system in northeast Queensland, I've outlined the system in northwest Queensland, and I've outlined the Kimberley system. So make sure you check out the 3 systems at the start of the broadcast. Gina, what about Mariba? Hello, Gina. I've met you, Gina. What about Mariba, Barron River, catchment? What do you think, Nitso? Yeah, so Mariba's in a very similar spot to Charters Towers, actually. They're very similar in that way because Mariba is too far west of the coastal. So this coastal convergence is very coastal. So that heavy rain on the coast is very, very coastal. Mariba is finding itself in a bit of a rain shadow area for that activity, right? So that means that Mariba's rainfall totals are going to be similar to Charters Towers, around that 50 to 100, 40 to 80, that sort of range over the course of the next few days. And if we take a look at the Barron catchment, look, I'm not a hydrologist, so I don't want to talk too much about catchments, but you can see there that it's the eastern part of the Barron catchment that's picking up a fair bit of rain. The western part's picking up that same thing that Mariba's picking up, right? 50 to 80, same thing as Atherton, 50 to 80, maybe 100 for Atherton. Atherton usually beats Mariba just a little bit, and I hated it. But it usually, that's the way it works. But, mate, nothing too dramatic there for the Atherton Tablelands, I wouldn't think. Something has to happen for the Atherton Tablelands to get big rain in this setup, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen over land. So when I say something has to happen, it means something has to happen over land for the Atherton Tablelands to pick up that big rain. And at this stage, everything that's happening is happening very coastal for the next few days. So Mariba, not too concerned, mate. Finch Hatton camping here for the last few days. Plenty of beers, plenty of rain, and plenty of good times. Good on you, Brett. That's the way to make it. That's the way to make it work. Bit late to the party, and I've probably missed it. What about Cairns? Yeah, we've talked about Cairns. We won't go back into Cairns. Cairns is in that northern edge of that heavy rainfall down south, and Cairns has to look out for localised heavy falls rather than the convergence heavy falls. Lotus, Goldsboro is in Gordonvale. Yeah, okay, so Lotus, same thing for Gordonvale. Gordonvale's on the northern edge of the boundary of that convergence. So as the convergence moves northwards in the next couple of days, we'll probably see Gordonvale a much better chance of picking up some heavy rainfall in the next couple of days. Jen, Townsville's king tides are Thursday. Yeah, so Jen, for Thursday for Townsville, once again, there'll be some heavy rainfall there, or at least we expect there to be, but assuming everything goes to plan, we expect there to be some heavy rainfall for Townsville on Thursday, but it's going to be touch and go as to whether we've got that strong onshore flow, because we might find ourselves just on the northerly side of that. So that means that that strong easterly flow is more around the Burdekin. So you can see there Townsville on the southern edge of the map. Notice that we've got some strong winds south of Townsville, and we've got some weak winds north of Townsville. So that's our convergence zone just in there. All right, so that's going to be tricky for Townsville on Thursday as to what effect that has on the king tides. Okay, so obviously if we're finding ourselves with the easterly piling on the water into the land, and then on top of the king tides, and then on top of that torrential rainfall, then yeah, Townsville could find itself in a little bit of bother there for the king tides for those areas that are very low lying. Yeah, so that's something we'd certainly be looking out for Townsville, and we might have a chat about it Tuesday night if you remind me. Will this turn into a cyclone in the coming week because everything is very wet? David, I'm not sure which system you're talking about. None of them will turn into a tropical cyclone in the next week, except for the Kimberley one. But the Kimberley's not all that wet, so I don't think that matters in the Kimberley, because the Kimberley's pretty dry. There's been some good rain there, but it's not like northeast Queensland. So, yeah, for the next week, mate, nothing will turn into a cyclone on the east coast. But for the Kimberley, yeah, we expect that to be a cyclone overnight. Loving the lives. Thanks, Nitto. No worries, Joy. Thanks for tuning in. Jerry, Joseph, the Bruce Highway is cut north of Ingham. Okay, cool. Thanks for letting us know, Jerry. Debbie, thanks, Nitto. Had heaps of rain so far. We have stereophonics frogs. Yeah, gotta love them. Been a long time subscriber. The Weather Centre radar models have saved the arse of a few friends of mine. They were in remote areas and tipped them off that stuff was coming. Some have now become members. That's awesome, Steve. Thanks for passing the word along, mate. Thoroughly recommend being a subscriber. There it is, folks. weatheriq.com.au/subscribe. It's on the top right of your screen. $30. You get me gibbering at you every day. In the wet season, in the dry season, I'm in the islands of Greece. And then through the membership, you can also get the Weather Centre, which is on its own $39.95 a year, or together with my gibbering is $69.95 a year. So yeah, thoroughly. I hope you do subscribe and support us. I think that's it. Have I answered all of them? Hey, oh no, I've got a couple more here, a couple of late ones. Hey mate, what's your thoughts on that inland trough linking up with this moisture up north for southern Queensland? Yeah, John, I don't see too much going on for southern Queensland, to be honest. Let's have a quick look. Let's have a quick look at your question here. So I want to have a look at to figure out an answer to your question, I've got to look at this. This is the thunderstorm steering winds, and this is a deep layer mean steering flow. So I want to see how far south this moist air comes. So obviously we want to see all of this. I don't have my little crayons. I like drawing on my little maps, but I can't do it when I'm doing a live stream. So we want to see this tropical stuff pushed down into southern Queensland and see how through Wednesday, Thursday, we've got a block there in southern Queensland. There's a ridge here that's blocking that moisture transportation through the deep layer atmosphere. So, yeah, there's nothing. It sort of breaks down. That's a good chance there as we get into Saturday, Sunday. See that? See how we break that down, and then we do bring some moisture down into the region. So, yeah, maybe that gives us a really nice chance of picking up some showers and thunderstorms down in southern Queensland as we go into Sunday, Monday, Tuesday of next week, right? So there's some chances there that we increase the moisture levels through southern Queensland, but there's nothing there that makes me go wow for that. That's just typical trough stuff. Not expecting sort of heavy falls extending down into southern Queensland or anything like that. Lucinda, Halifax, yeah. Well, it's the same as we talked about, right? You're in that convergence zone. So that convergence max is rolling stone through to Gordonvale. So The same thing here for Lucinda. Lucinda, you're right in the middle of that. So the idea would be very significant rainfall over the next week or so. Falls in the 200 to 500 millimeters would be pretty likely. Lucinda just away from the mountain ranges a little bit, but because you're just on the coast, there is a chance that we might get a little spin up, a little eddy that forms very close to Lucinda, especially with Hinchinbrook Island just there. So that gives us a really good indicator there of the sort of rainfall we can expect between now and Thursday. And don't be surprised if that rainfall increases a bit on Wednesday night, Thursday, as it pushes back down south towards Townsville later in the week. So there's some really good signs of fantastic rainfall for the Lucinda area. And the biggest thing to understand for Lucinda is going to be the increase in winds that you need to be aware of. So today, the wind's not too bad. Tomorrow, the winds are going to start to freshen up from that east-northeasterly direction. All right, and you can see there, the winds around Lucinda getting up to about 25, sustained at 25 to 35 knots. Wazza, we've talked about Longreach. Longreach is just south of the big stuff. But still going to get some rain from the outflow cloud, all right? So that's what we talked about with regards to Longreach. But we're not expecting that really heavy flood rain down to Longreach. Thanks, Nanise. Nanise says, thanks, Nitsa. You've always been great at what you do. Thank you. Mount Isa outlook. Mount Isa, Deb. Mount Isa, oh, bud. Mount Isa is just west of... And this is important, right? Mount Isa is just west of the big stuff. So if we take a look, the low is expected to sort of drift over Mount Isa. But as we said, the low isn't creating heavy rain around itself, right? The low is creating the heavy rain east of itself. So if the low gets to Mount Isa, the heavy rain is east and southeast of Mount Isa. So that's a really important thing to understand, that the low, and we talked about why that's the case. So once again, I showed you this diagram, right, for Mount Isa. So there's our low. Let's try that again. Where is it? All right, what am I doing here? Let's try that again with a different model, one that's got the low right. All right. Oh, that's what I'm doing. I'm not looking far enough out. All right, so there's our low. So our low gets to Mount Isa, and you think, holy dooly, I'm getting smashed, I'm getting smashed. Have a look at who's getting the rain in this setup. So see how Mount Isa is just on the edge of the rain? And all the big rain is southeast of Mount Isa. So east and southeast of Mount Isa, right? So the idea is the low isn't what's creating the rainfall. It's the squeezing pattern on the eastern side of the low. So as the low drifts directly at Mount Isa, the actual rain will probably push away from Mount Isa. So you're going to get a fair bit of rain as the low pushes down. So as the low starts to push down to Mount Isa, yeah, sure, there'll be a fair bit of rain there for Mount Isa in the next 24 hours or so. And then once the low gets to Mount Isa, all the rain will push and slip east and southeast of Mount Isa. So that's why you're just on the edge. So when we look at the total accumulated precip maps, Mount Isa is constantly finding themselves right on the edge of the heavy rain. So extreme rainfall east out towards Cloncurry and further east, and not much rainfall west of Mount Isa. So Mount Isa is literally the cutoff of heavy rainfall because the low is expected to drift right over the top of Mount Isa. And remember, the low is not creating the weather. It's the squeezing on the eastern side of the low that's creating the weather. Only just joined Burdekin area. Not getting as much as originally anticipated. No, it's pretty much the same as we anticipated. You weren't getting much to start with. I don't mean to be a smart ass. No, just you weren't getting much to start with. So I think we were looking at sort of 50 to 150s for the Burdekin. I think we got the 50s in the first day. We might still see another 50 to 100 through the Burdekin. So I think we're on target. Yeah, but I don't think Burdekin was ever one of those places where we were really looking at a lot of rain. Yeah, just that first day we were looking at a bit of rain, and I think you got that. Most folks down there got about 50 mils out of it. Thanks, Neville. Good coverage. I trust your weather predictions more than the other idiots who have weather pages. So good night. Hey, listen, David, one of the things I say, not every weather page is shit, mate. There's a lot of shit ones. And I would say out of the weather pages you're going to find, 50% are run by good people who just don't have a great idea, but they're doing their best and they're trying their best. 30% are run by crooks who are just trying to get likes, shares because their pages are monetized. So there's 30% bad actors. I would say that would be about what I'd expect. 30% are bad actors, and all they're trying to do is hype up everything because they know that the more people that share their shit and the more people that look at their shit, they get paid. They get paid, and they get paid, and they make bank, and they make bank big time. All right, so 30% are bad actors, 50% are people with great intentions but probably not the knowledge, and then there's 20% that are good. There are good pages out there, folks. There are good weather pages to follow. The problem is the algorithm won't show them to you. The algorithm will show you the shit ones that hype shit up. And unfortunately, it's the 30% of bad actors that get seen on social media, all right? Because they're the ones that get shared. They're the ones that the algorithm targets because they're the ones that go viral. It's so annoying. And the 20% of good pages out there that don't get seen, it's yeah. I'll have a chat to the legal team and I'll see how we go legally with naming and shaming. I think sometimes there's a legal grey area there, but if we can back up the naming and shaming, perhaps the legal grey area becomes black and white. So I'll see what our legal people think about a name and shame. I know they're probably not going to be keen on it, but yeah, I don't want to name and shame. Maybe what we could do is perhaps name some of the good ones that you could follow and maybe put that as a pinned post. Might think about doing that in the dry season. Get a group of the pages that Nitso recommends personally for you to watch that don't hype shit up, that know their stuff, that are either run by meteorologists or run by people who have done some study in meteorology, because I think that part's important. And yeah, but as I say, don't get me wrong. There's 50% of pages out there who are run by really good people. Just probably need someone in their team that has that up here. All right, just that extra technical understanding of what's going on. Otherwise, you're getting a lot of pages that mean well, but they're regurgitating models without understanding what models are showing. And so they'll show you the rain chart, and they won't understand why the rain's falling. So yeah, that's a bit of a problem there, right? So we need to be able to get that understanding of why the rain's falling. All right. But yeah, mate, listen, don't pigeonhole every page into thinking they're all bad, Dave, because there are good pages out there, mate. The problem is you got to go digging for them because they're not going to pop up on your news feed. Sorry if I've missed Croydon. Ian Harvey, Central Highlands. No, mate, we're not looking at big numbers for the Central Highlands. Central Highlands at this stage, maybe Moranbah area could see some okay rainfall through the week. Ballyendo, I mean, in the northwestern edge of the Central Highlands, yeah. Look, we're not looking at big numbers, but maybe get ourselves up into the 50 to 100 range, up around Ballyendo. But if you're talking Central Highlands as in Emerald, Dysart, Blackwater, Springshaw, those sort of areas down south, no, not really. What you'll have to wait for is the trough to come through on the weekend, and on the weekend, hopefully you'll get a bit of rain, or early next week, get a bit of rain from the trough, and you can see there, as I'm gibbering and pushing through, see how we're starting to get some good rain from the next trough as we go into early next week or the weekend. So that might be the best chance of the Central Highlands picking it up. All right, yeah, I think that's where I'll leave it, folks. All right, so have a good night and stay safe out there. Just remember, if you do want to support us, we are fully funded by ourselves. That means we don't get a cent from the government. By the way, that's why we also don't put up with shit. So if you give us crap online, we give it back to you twice as hard. So don't give us crap. We start at $32.95. If you want to listen to me gibbering every day during the wet season, let you know exactly what's going on, $32.95. I'll see you there. Have a good night.